If the communication is breaking down in your marriage, you're at each other's throats, not seeing eye to eye, or you're just constantly arguing, then you're probably making one of a few core mistakes. In today's podcast episode, I'm going to be breaking down what these mistakes are and how you can fix them. So if you want to destroy arguments, you want to communicate better, get back on the same page with your wife, and make sure you implement these steps right away. If you don't know who I am, my name's Toni Versic, and I've helped over 5,000 men fix their marriages, reconnect with their children, and find work-life balance. The first mistake is ignoring the problem. How do you know if you have a communication problem in your relationship? Well, it's having arguments. It's being at each other's throats. It's a disconnection in the relationship. If you come home after a long work day, protecting and providing for your family, only to come home to disconnection, where you don't feel appreciated or respected by your wife, you're not having enough sex or intimacy, you're on opposite ends of the couch scrolling on your phones, you're not talking about the problems. When you do talk about the problems, you just get angry and upset at each other. That means by definition, you have a problem. Now, just like Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is actually admitting you have a problem. Now, as a man, our ego gets in the way and we blame our partner for the problem instead of just saying, you know what? I am a part of this problem. I have a communication problem and I'm gonna do something to fix it. So the first mistake is ignoring the problem, sweeping it under the rug. And the solution here is admitting you have a problem. I did this for years in my relationship. Thousands of our clients have done it. We just ignore these things and sweep them under the rug, hoping they're gonna go away. They're not gonna go away on their own. Nobody's coming to save you. It is your responsibility to admit, hey, I need to work on my communication. This is a weak point of mine. It's a problem. The second mistake is playing the blame game in our relationships. Whether it's with your partner, where you have a lack of communication or arguments, or whether it's team members or with your children, what we tend to do as men is play the blame game. I did this for years of my marriage, coming home, providing, so I thought I was doing my job, and then my wife would be upset at me for coming home late. She didn't appreciate all the hard work I did. She expected me to help out around the house, even though I had done my role, and she'd agreed to her role of looking after our daughter and the house. So then I'd play the blame game, blaming her for the argument, blaming her for making me feel upset, making me feel triggered. I would blame her for the disagreements and the disconnection and breakdown in communication. The solution here is to remember that it's not your fault. If you suck at communication, if you admit you have a problem, it's not your fault. It's not your partner's fault either. No one intentionally argues with someone they love. No one intentionally gets upset and triggered and angry. But if you're playing the blame game, then you allocate responsibility to that person. So just reminding yourself right now, it's not your fault that this is happening. It's not your partner's fault that this is happening. You cannot control your partner. What you can control is yourself. And the way you do that is you simply say, I'm taking responsibility for the quality of my communication. My partner has a role to play. She's a big part of this, but I'm taking responsibility of my role in the situation. It's not my fault. I wasn't taught how to communicate. I didn't go to communication school. I've had to figure this shit out on my own, which is why you're watching this video, taking radical responsibility. So if you're currently playing the blame game, ask yourself, who am I blaming for my lack of communication? And how can I take responsibility? What's my role in this situation? Admit you have a problem, take responsibility, and then commit to doing something to fix it. The third mistake is thinking that arguments are a bad thing. Arguments, disagreements, and a breakdown of communication are normal and necessary parts of any single relationship. Why? Because once you admit you have a problem, and once you take responsibility for your role, you realize that arguments happen because you and your partner are completely different people. At the beginning of a relationship, we think the sun shines out of our partner's ass. We ignore the negatives, we ignore the bad things, and also we don't show all of ourselves to our partner, and they don't show all of themselves to us. But over 6 months, a year, 5, 10, my partner and I have been together for 8 years, you start to learn more about that person. And you realize that arguments are normal because your partner had different parents, she had a different upbringing, she has different thoughts, she has different feelings, she has different sexual organs. She has a vagina, you have a penis, she has different hormones, and all of these things influence the things your partner thinks and feels. Now you, just like your partner, you've got a penis, completely different to your partner, but you, just like your partner, have different parents, different upbringings, different beliefs, different stories, different values, different principles. And now you've got these two people who might love each other. You might love your partner, you might love your children, you might love your team, but you've got completely different opposing worldviews. You have completely different ways of seeing the world. And this is where this principle of arguments are normal and necessary comes in. A relationship is built on growth. You don't find the right person right from the jump. You grow together. You take these opposing worldviews and you work on them so you can come to a middle ground. Now, we're going to get into that in the next step, but just remember, the mistake is thinking that arguments are bad or negative. They're not. They're normal and necessary. What isn't normal is to have the same arguments about the same things. What isn't normal and necessary is to have the same breakdown in communication about the same issues over and over again. This is what used to happen to my wife, Rosie, and I. She had beliefs and trauma from earlier in her life. She was cheated on by her partner. So she had a belief that when I looked in the direction of another woman, it meant I wanted to have sex with her. Now, if you're a man, you know that's not the case. She would ask me hours later, she'd be upset at me and say, "Why'd you look at that girl?" And I would genuinely have no idea who she was talking about. I'm like, I have no idea who she's talking about. But in her mind, her stories and beliefs, her traumas, which caused her to think this way, made her think that I was still thinking about that girl. Now, we had that argument for a very long time, and then we got to a point where we resolved it, and it hasn't been brought up in over a year because we had that argument and we worked through it. So arguments are normal and necessary because they allow you to understand your partner's thoughts and beliefs, your team's thoughts and beliefs, whoever you're communicating with. But the next step is understanding it's not normal to have the same arguments. We get to resolve them, which we're going to break down how to do in the following few mistakes and solutions. So how do we actually find those mistakes and solutions? Well, the next mistake is not bringing awareness to these problems. You see, the first step is admitting you have a problem. The second step is actually bringing awareness to why that problem keeps happening. Why is there a breakdown of communication? Why are you at each other's throats? Why are you arguing? Why do these things keep happening over and over again? And that's where awareness comes in. If you're on the motorway or the highway, you've got your entire family in the car, you turn right into the next lane, there's a truck there, that truck runs you over and you die, your entire family dies. It's not because you wanted to kill anyone or drive into a truck. It's because that truck was in a blind spot. And as men, we're not taught to explore and go deeper into our issues, therefore we don't resolve them. Which is ironic because in my business or my career or your business or career, we find the problems, we diagnose them, we solve them, we bring awareness to the problem. So the first step here is understanding that awareness is how you create change. And there are a few core areas we want to bring awareness to when it comes to the way we communicate and also in the way our partner or the other person in that relationship communicates. Just really quickly before we continue, if you're getting value from this podcast episode, then please, if you're watching on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. If you're watching on podcast platforms, give it 5 stars. It helps us reach more men and keep more families together. The way that we bring that awareness to this breakdown of communication is by asking a simple question. What is triggering that argument, or what is triggering that breakdown of communication? You don't just suddenly start yelling at each other or feel disconnected in your communication. There is a trigger that occurs. For example, I come home after a long day, I'm providing for my family. The first thing my wife says is, "You're home late again." That causes me, because I'm not in control as a man, I have a story that I was working hard, this isn't fair. This all happens subconsciously within seconds, and her comment triggers me getting upset and angry. There is a trigger, there is a moment in time where that breakdown happens, where that argument happens. That is the domino, the first domino that causes the rest of the dominoes to fall. So ask yourself, what is triggering the breakdown in communication? What is triggering the arguments in this relationship? Is it something your partner says? Is it the way that they look at you? We do most of our communication non-verbally. You would know all about this if your partner gives you a dirty look. Is it the fact that you're on opposite ends of the couch and you don't feel comfortable having a conversation? Is the trigger that you come home and you don't feel comfortable sharing with your partner how you feel? Maybe you're not having enough sex, you don't feel intimate, you don't feel appreciated, you don't feel comfortable communicating it, so you bottle it up. And then your partner says one thing and you explode like a ticking time bomb. So simply asking yourself this question brings awareness to what the triggers are, what the first domino is. What is triggering the argument? What is triggering the breakdown in your communication? The first type of trigger that you can probably relate to is feeling attacked. Now, women often do this, and the biggest complaint we get from our empowered man clients is, I'm doing my best to provide, I'm exhausted, I'm stressed, and then my partner attacks me. She nags me, right? Have you ever been nagged for leaving the toilet seat up or for not doing something or forgetting something? Now, we often think that our partner is upset about that thing, but she doesn't give a fuck about the toilet seat. What she cares about is the story that she's created around that. We're gonna get into what that means in a second, but just identifying where in your relationship do you feel attacked by your partner? And remembering this core principle around communication. When people feel attacked, they defend. If you are not aware of this, it happens within a split second subconsciously. As a man, your ego gets in the way, somebody says something, and even if you know that thing is true, let's say your partner says, you came home late again. It's right, she's correct. Let's say you're not spending enough time with your children, you're working too much and not present at home, and she says that to you. Even though she's right, you feel attacked and you'll defend. You'll defend by reacting to that trigger. You'll defend by raising your voice. You'll defend by, shutting off or shutting down. There is a reaction of defense. So if you remember this principle that there are triggers and you identify what the triggers are, and then you identify where do I feel attacked and where do I feel like I need to defend myself in this relationship, then you can move on to the next step on actually how to break it down. This leads us to understanding what actually causes us to feel attacked and defend. There might be certain trigger words, certain words that when they're said, challenge you as a man. So the trigger words might be, you're never home enough, or you work too much, or you spend too much on the time on the business and not enough of us, or you don't care, or I don't feel like I can speak to you, or I'm not emotionally available. Or for a lot of men, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't love you anymore. That's exactly what my partner said to me 8 years ago. She came home and said, I don't love you anymore because I was ignoring the problems. I was playing the blame game, not taking responsibility. I thought arguments were just a part of life. You can't get rid of them. We kept arguing about the same shit. And I wasn't aware of the triggers. I wasn't aware I was defending. And after 6 months of having these arguments, she'd had enough because we didn't communicate about it. So what are the trigger words? What are the words your partner uses? And what are the things you say to your partner? The specific language, the specific words you use and they use that cause you to feel triggered, that cause you to feel attacked and then defend. This is where we can take it even a step further. There's these specific words you use that cause you to feel triggered, that cause you to feel attacked and defend. But then the other part of communication, the other part of language is how we say something. The words you use that cause you to feel triggered are the what, they're what words you used, and then the how is the tonality between those words. For example, I can say the same sentence multiple different ways and it has different meanings. So when my wife asks me, how was your day? And I say, fine, she might get triggered. Now I used the good word, my day was fine. However, I didn't say, my day was fine, babe, how was yours? I said, fine. That can now be a trigger for her, not the word itself, but the way I said it. The tonality really matters. I can say, my day was fine. How was your day? I can say, fine. She can say, hey, can you help me with this thing? I can say, fine. Now, they all have different emotions and energy attached to it. One is triggered, one is frustrated, one is judgmental. They all have different meanings, even though I'm using different tonality. So how are you communicating with the people in your life? Are you using tonality that's calm, understanding, patient? Or are you using tonality with your language that's judgmental? Are you being rude? Are you being arrogant? Now, often as men, we don't do this intentionally, just like driving into a truck in your blind spot and dying. But if we can bring awareness to the language that we use, the what, and also the tonality, the how we say it, now we know how we can change our communication. What am I saying? How am I saying it? What words am I using? What tonality am I using? And if we can identify, that's the tonality that makes me feel attacked. That's the trigger words. Those are the trigger words that make me feel attacked. The next time it happens, we're like, the truck's there. And then we can slow down that subconscious pattern that happens within a millisecond, takes 0.3 seconds to react. And now we can choose something different, which is better communication and avoiding or destroying arguments for good. Hey, before we continue, if you actually want help becoming a master communicator, you want to communicate better as a husband, as a father, you want more intimacy and connection, and you want to take that success in your relationship and have it in your business and wealth, communicate well, that's exactly what we teach our empowered man clients to do. We've helped over 5,000 men like you fix their marriages, reconnect with their children, and find work-life balance by becoming master communicators. It's the most important skill on the planet. So down below, the top link will take you to book a coaching session with our Empowered Man team. And on that session, for free, we'll build out your custom Empowered Man roadmap on how to communicate like a king and have the life you deserve. Click the link if you want a free coaching session and a roadmap customized to you. This is going to lead us to the final part of awareness, and we get to understand that all arguments, all breakdowns of communication, scrapping everything else I just said, it's super important and relevant. It comes down to stories. Stories, thoughts, they're all just language in your head. You don't walk around like a caveman going, ooh, ooh, ah, ah, ee, ah, right? You don't just bend someone over and start banging them. You can't do that in this day and age. We've transcended. As a leader, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, as a man, you have stories in your head. You have sentences, words in your head, and your partner has the exact same. And because you have different upbringings and different beliefs and different principles and different perspectives, those beliefs and stories clash. So for example, let's say you're arguing about working too much. You're arguing about how you're raising your children. You're arguing about the fact that you don't have enough sex. You don't feel appreciated or respected. You've got a story or belief that blames that person, and you think your story is right and their story is wrong. As an example, I come home late, my wife's upset at me. This all happens within 0.3 seconds. My subconscious stories, just like driving a car, you don't think about it. It happens without thinking. My subconscious stories are, she doesn't care. I've been busting my balls all day. This isn't fair. I don't feel appreciated. The house is a mess. What has she been doing all day? Those are my stories, and I don't even realize they're happening. Now, those stories cause me to feel, because your thoughts dictate your feelings, I feel angry. I feel triggered. I feel frustrated. I feel upset. I don't feel loved or understood. That's my story. Those are my feelings. I'm not even aware of them. Now, my wife's story is, I've been at home all day. Our daughter has been really difficult. I'm tired. I haven't slept all night. I'm feeling a bit depressed. My husband doesn't want to spend time with me. We used to spend so much time together. All he does is work. He doesn't respect me. He doesn't appreciate me. He doesn't understand what I'm going through. I don't feel safe and secure. Now, we don't look to understand their story. What we do is we just project our story onto our partner. So she triggers us with her tonality and her choice of words. You're home late again. Now that's feedback. When someone triggers us, when someone says something that makes us feel angry, makes us feel like we want to defend, they're actually giving us feedback. Now, oftentimes your partner or anyone giving you these triggers, they're not giving you great feedback. They're not using great tonality. They're not calm and patient. But as a man, the only thing you can control is how you respond. So when I'm aware, my story is this, her story is this, because I've broken it down, because I'm trying to be a better communicator, a better leader. I'm trying to destroy arguments and transcend them. I now get to understand that I have a story and she has a story, which then leads me to the next step, which is I get to stop trying to be right. How do I know my story is true? How do I know she doesn't appreciate me? How do I know she doesn't care? How do I know why the house is a mess? How do I know why she's upset at me? Do I know how long she's been feeling this way? Do I know how many times I have come home late when I said I wouldn't? Do I know if she's feeling loved, appreciated, supported, understood, or respected? I don't know any of those things. All I know is I'm triggered, I'm upset. I feel like I'm right. I feel like she's wrong. I feel attacked, I defend. And by defending, I judge her. I might get angry or yell at her. I might react to her. And I project my story. This isn't fair, I'm busting my balls. What do you want from me, woman? I don't spend any time trying to understand her story. Stop trying to be right. It's not about who's right or wrong in the relationship. You can have completely opposing beliefs, stories, and worldviews and still come to a resolution. So the principle to remind yourself of here, if you've got a breakdown in communication, if you're not seeing eye to eye, if you're arguing, is just remind yourself, I'm choosing to be triggered. It's not on purpose, just like driving a car. I don't think about it, but I'm getting triggered. I'm thinking these thoughts and telling myself these stories. I'm feeling these negative emotions. Before I project that onto the person, I'm gonna stop trying to be right and I'm gonna try and understand them first. And this takes fucking balls as a modern day man. It takes courage to seek to understand that person before seeking to be understood. This is one of the most powerful principles you'll ever learn in your life. It will make you a better leader in your business. It will make you a better father. It will make you a better husband. And it will create so much more connection in your relationships because the people around you, they're also getting triggered. They're also upset. They also have stories and beliefs, but you're making their stories wrong. You're judging them for them. You're beating them down. Now, what a woman wants is safety and security. How do you think your wife feels? Even if she knows you're right, when you're beating her down and projecting your stories on her all the fucking time. She feels beat down, unsafe, and insecure. And that's how marriages break down. So remind yourself, I've got breakdown in my communication. I have a problem. I'm part of the problem. So is she. I can't control her. What's my role in this? What are my stories? What are my triggers? What are my emotions? I get to stop trying to be right and I get to understand her perspective. How do you understand someone? You ask. Okay, clearly you're upset at me. Like, help me understand what I can do differently. Thank you for the feedback. Help me understand how we can fix this. Help me understand what you're thinking. Help me understand what you're feeling. Help me understand how I talk, how I communicate, what I do, what I don't do. Help me understand how that's making you feel. And if you can slow down and understand that person, then you can see their point of view. When my wife's upset at me for coming home late, she's not upset about the home late. She's upset because she feels alone. She feels like I'm not present. She feels like I keep lying about finishing early. She doesn't know that I've had a stressful day. She doesn't know that I had to fire someone. She doesn't know any of that because I haven't communicated it. I just broke down and didn't actually communicate. Seek to understand, and the way you do this is by asking questions. Help me understand how you're feeling. Help me understand what you're thinking. Understand their story, and now you can unravel it and come to a middle ground. This all comes back to actually talking about the problems without attacking, without using trigger words, without using negative tonality, and by hearing out their story first. And once you understand that person's story by asking powerful questions, then this is how you communicate. You say, I understand and I hear you and I see you and I appreciate you sharing that with me. Is it okay if I share with you my perspective? Is it okay if I share with you my story? You see, instead of defending and going, well, you don't appreciate me, you don't care. Okay, so what I've heard you say is, you're upset because I work a lot. I've been saying for months, years, that I'll work less. You feel like I don't appreciate you. You feel like you're alone. You feel like I choose the business over you. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's what I've heard you say. When you say to someone, what I've heard you say, they feel heard. When you repeat it back to them, they feel heard. It means you listened, even though you want to react and defend, and you ask permission. You say, is it okay if I share with you my story? I see your perspective, that I work a lot. And you're right, I do work a lot. You take responsibility because they're often right. And I want to spend more time with you and the family. And work has been really stressful and I haven't communicated that with you. I haven't told you about that. I'm feeling really stressed. You tell her now how you're feeling and what you're thinking. And now you understand each other better, which diffuses the emotion because you don't use tonality, you don't use negative language, you calmly, just like I'm doing right now, you take a breath and go, okay, I understand, you're right. And now you understand each other's points of view. Now, once you understand each other's points of view, the next step is to come to a resolution. You just ask yourself, what can I do to make this better? What do you need from me? What do you want me to commit to? And then you, as the man, you make the first commitment. Now you might go, this is unfair. Life's not fucking fair. Business isn't fucking fair. The world is fucking hard. You can hope your partner changes. You can hope she comes on the journey, or you can lead from the front. That's what great leaders do, is they help people shift their stories by first taking responsibility. This is my role in the situation. This is what I can change to change how you feel, to make you think differently. This is what I'm committed to. And you make one commitment from that argument on what you're gonna do differently. You know what? I'm probably gonna finish work late. Again, is it okay when that happens that I just send you a message instead of expecting you to understand? And is it okay, can I ask a request of you that you give me some leeway because I'm growing this business for you? Now, this is what I said to Rosie, if you want me to work less and make less money, I can do that, but it means we won't have the same type of life. She said, no, I want you to work. I want you to provide. I just want you to let me know and communicate with me. Boom, we have a resolution. So once you understand each other, once you understand what the worldviews are, make a commitment. And once you've made that commitment, you can ask the final question, which is, do you mind if I make a request of you? And one of the best requests you can make is, next time you're upset at me about this thing that triggers you, that causes arguments, is it okay? I know it's hard, but is it okay if you just tell me before it builds up? Because often we bottle it up. And you give your partner permission to call you out in a loving way. So now Rosie knows in my relationship, if I don't follow through or if she's upset, she can say, hey babe, I don't want to stress you out, but I've been feeling upset recently. And now we create this relationship where we can talk about our feelings and our triggers and our emotions and our stories without tonality or negative energy, and we work through them together. The final part of this then is to just actually commit to having these conversations. During the first 4 years of my relationship with my wife, we've been together for 8 years, we're more in love than ever. We have more connection, more intimacy, more respect, more appreciation, more understanding than ever. I think that's what a relationship deserves. Your relationship should get better over time. There should be more of a spark. But the first 4 years, we argued so much. We had so many disagreements. Her upbringing, my upbringing, my working too much. As we grew the business and wealth, balance disappeared. I was triggered, I was stressed, I was emotional, I wasn't in a good state. But over time, we started working through it. We would never go to bed without resolving it. The answer here is when you have an argument, when you have a breakdown of communication, that is your opportunity to transcend. Instead of looking at it as a negative thing, it is an opportunity to grow together, to understand each other better, and to find a resolution, to find a solution. And you do that by asking each other what the solution is. And the next time the argument happens, because it might, you revisit that solution. And if you do that enough times, the solution will become reality and that problem will disappear. And then guess what happens? Another breakdown in communication, another trigger, another problem, another story will come up and you work through it. And it might take you 6 months, it might take you a year, it might take you 5, but if you do this enough times, you'll get to a point in that relationship, and it can happen much faster, by the way, where you don't have these arguments anymore, where you communicate effectively, where you understand each other, where you know what the triggers are, you know how to not push each other's buttons, you know how to see eye to eye, because you resolve it. Don't ever go to bed angry. Don't sweep things under the rug. Resolve the issues. If your business is burning to the ground, if you don't have enough money, you find a solution. If you need to pay a tax bill, you find a solution. Find the solutions in your relationship and commit to becoming a master of communication, because communication is the key to connection. And by the way, you deserve to have great communication with your partner, but your children deserve to see what communication looks like so they don't make the same mistakes you and I have made. Because the only reason we don't know how to communicate is because we weren't taught how. And that is your role as a father, as a husband, as a man, as a business owner, is to become a master communicator by implementing these steps. So let's recap the mistakes. Number 1 is ignoring the problems. And the first solution is to just admit, I have a problem with communication. I'm not great at it. I'm not a great communicator. I have a problem. I need to fix these arguments. I need to change. Mistake number 2, playing the blame game, blaming your partner, blaming the other people for the relationships. It's not your fault. It's not their fault, but take responsibility. What's my role in this breakdown of communication? Number 3, believing that arguments are a problem and negative. They're not. Arguments are necessary and normal. What's not normal is to have the same arguments, the same breakdowns of communication. That's what gets to change. Which brings us to understanding that awareness is the first step to change. What is triggering this breakdown of communication? What's triggering the arguments? Is it the fact that you feel attacked and then you defend? Is it the specific words that are being used in this relationship? Is it the tonality of those words and how those words are being said? What are the triggers causing the breakdown? And then what are your stories? What are your stories and emotions that you're feeling? And how do you know those things are true? Before you project your stories and your emotions and your frustration, seek to understand before seeking to be understood. It's not about being right. Stop trying to be right. Start trying to understand your partner. Every negative communication breakdown, every argument is feedback on how you can improve your relationship. And the way you do that is by understanding that person, their stories, their thoughts, their beliefs, by asking powerful questions. Help me understand. And then feeding it back to them. This is what I've heard you say. Is it okay if I share my stories and how I'm feeling? And calmly and patiently understanding each other and coming to a resolution and committing to a solution together until the next time and repeating the process. If you do this, your communication will get so much better. Now, this is difficult to do. It's easier said than done, which is why we run the Empowered Man program. We've helped over 5,000 men like you fix their marriages, reconnect with their children, and find work-life balance with some of the world's leading coaches and experts, including myself. So click the link down below if you want to book a coaching session with our Empowered Man team. On that session, for free, we'll build out your custom Empowered Man roadmap on how to have a better marriage, how to become a master communicator, and win and succeed in your health, wealth, and relationships. Also, if you got value from this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up on YouTube or 5 stars on the podcast platforms. I really appreciate your support. Let's keep more families together. Let's become empowered men.